I sit down on the couch next to Anna after a long day at work. We're watching TV, trying to relax after a stressful day. It's a Thursday evening, and we usually just watch something random on TV while we slowly unwind. I glance at Anna from the corner of my eye. We've been married for 12 years now, so I know her better than anyone else. I know how she reacts to things and how she behaves. That's why I notice the small change in her demeanor when her phone beeps. Big news? I ask, watching her type on her phone. Work group chat, she says, her eyes still on the screen, her mouth curling into a grin I haven't seen in a while. Greg's recounting the printer mishap from earlier. I pretended to not think anything of it. Greg? I don't think I've heard of him. Yeah, haven't I? Anna answers a little too quickly. He's the new marketing guy. Been with us for like 3 months. The TV screen flickered in front of her, and she turned it away from me a little bit, but not before I could see the name of the group chat again. Greg Work Group Chat. It struck me as somewhat odd that it was worded that way. Quite the first day if he's already found the printer, I respond, glancing at her from the corner of my eye. She laughed, but it was a nervous laugh, like she was trying to be polite. No, he's been there long enough for that. You should hear about the time he tried to fix the coffee machine. After that, she didn't say much more. She kept looking at her phone, smiling at the notifications. I turned on the news and watched the weather forecast, trying to ignore the storm brewing inside me. It's getting late, I say eventually, after stretching for effect. I have an early meeting. Says Anna, still looking at her phone. I'll be up soon. I stood up and saw that she was looking at her phone. She didn't try to hide it, a savvy liar's instinct. Don't stay up too late talking to other people about creepy printer stories, I said. I won't, she says, looking up at me at last, with that smile she normally uses to erase all my worries. But tonight, it isn't quite working. As I walk up the stairs, I begin to reflect on all this, and in my mind, I begin to make a flowchart of possibilities. I've been married to her for 12 years now, and I've never been the jealous type. She's had male friends and co-workers ever since I met her, and it has never bothered me. But this time, something is different, I feel. Or is it? I brush my teeth and wash my face, and check my medicine cabinet to make sure everything's in order. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I like to keep everything clean and organized. Just as I get into bed, I hear Anna walking up the stairs. She enters the bedroom humming a tune. Humming? I haven't heard her hum in a long time, have I? Was the show good? I ask as she gets ready for bed. Same old, she says, heading into the bathroom. The faucet turns on, the sound of opening and closing drawers. There's supposed to be some rain this weekend, I guess. I lay back down in bed and said, "Oh well, I guess we won't be going to the garden center then." There was a pause, just a slight hesitation before she responded. "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I might have to work on Saturday." I frowned. That was unusual. "Okay," I said. She climbed into bed with me a few minutes later, and I noticed she was wearing a new perfume. As she leaned over to kiss me, I couldn't help but notice her phone light up again. "Good night," she says, rolling over to turn off her lamp. "Good night," I say back as I watch her put her phone down and get comfortable. I listen to her breathing as it grows slower, steadier. My mind is still racing, making mental notes of everything. The new perfume, the sudden need to work on the weekend, the group name that wasn't a group, the smile. I don't trust my instincts, so I decide to look things up. I wait until she's asleep, then I pick up my phone and search for all the Gregs working for her company on LinkedIn. There's only one Greg in the marketing department, and he's been working there for 4 months, not 3. I study his profile picture, memorizing his face. Then I delete my search and put my phone away. As I close my eyes, I hear the first raindrops hit the window. The forecast was right about one thing. It is going to rain this weekend. I have a hard time falling asleep. I can't get that man's face out of my head. The man who might be sleeping with my wife. For hours, I drift in and out of sleep, thinking about Greg, the storm raging outside, and Anna sleeping peacefully next to me. Eventually, I fall asleep, but I don't get much rest before the alarm goes off. The rain continued all night and into the morning, and there were puddles in the driveway as Anna drove away to work that Friday morning. She left a bit earlier than usual, but I didn't think much of it. I took a shower, got dressed, and prepared for my own work day. As I sipped my coffee, I noticed Anna had left her cup in the sink. There was a smudge of red lipstick on it, which was a bit unusual for her. She usually didn't wear red lipstick to work. I received a text from Anna shortly after she left. "Hey, sorry I won't be able to make it to lunch today. Something came up at work. I'll make it up to you, I promise." It was odd, considering she had been so excited about lunch earlier. "Yeah, sure. Good luck," I say, not really caring, just saying the words. The first part of the day is uneventful. I glance at my watch a few times, thinking about the lunch we won't have. At 12:30, I sit in my car on the parking lot. I hesitate. Then I make up my mind and drive away. It takes me 17 minutes to get to Anna's work. I've driven there many times throughout the years, so I know the way. I park my car outside the office building and see her car in the parking lot. "Hey, just here to deliver some lunch," I say to the security guard, showing him a paper bag from Anna's favorite deli. He lets me pass with a nod. He's used to seeing me here, dropping off her forgotten work, or actually coming to see her for lunch. I take the elevator up to the 4th floor. Marketing occupies the north side of the building, and as I approach the glass walls of the department, I scan for Anna. No sight of her. There's a receptionist at the entrance. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Anna. I brought her lunch," I say, holding up the bag and grinning broadly. "She's in a meeting," the woman replies, and then pauses. "I think she might be out with them? At the new place? Around the corner?" I cleared my throat and tried to sound casual. "Oh, right. The sudden client meeting. Was it just Anna, or did Greg also leave with her?" She hesitated for a second. "Greg called in sick this morning." "Okay, thank you," I said, walking away. There was a conference room nearby, and I could hear Anna's voice coming from a cell phone inside. "Hey, this is Anna. I'm not here right now, but if you leave me a message, I'll call you back as soon as possible." Another male voice. "Hey, it's me. Meeting got moved to Riverside instead. Text me when you get this." There was something charismatic and confident about this person's voice. I tried to commit it to memory as I walked back to my car. I got back into my vehicle and sat there watching the front door to the building. I held the paper bag in my hands, crumpling it slightly. At 1:47 p.m., Anna came out the side entrance, not the door I had been watching. She was wearing a different scarf. This one was darker, a color I hadn't seen her wear before. Her hair was slightly out of place, and she was blushing, as if the rain had embarrassed her. She was looking down at her phone and smiling at it as she walked to her car, getting in after a moment and driving away. I followed her at a distance, but she didn't go back to work. She went to a different neighborhood entirely. That night, I got home before her and waited. She got back later than usual, and I noticed she had changed her scarf again, this time to a color I recognized. "How was the meeting with your client?" I ask, chopping vegetables at the kitchen island for dinner. It was an emergency meeting," she says, putting down her bag. "You know how those are." "At the bistro?" She hesitated for a moment. "No, we went to Riverside instead. The client wanted somewhere with less noise." I sliced a carrot in half as I said, "Rainy day for Riverside." "The rain stopped after lunch," she says, heading up the stairs. "I'm going to go get changed for dinner." I noticed she was touching her neck where the scarf had been only moments before. The carrot was cut into perfect little circles now, and I started in on a piece of celery. "Hey," I say, looking up at her. "We should go to Riverside for dinner someday, just the two of us, seeing as you liked it so much today." I heard her close a drawer upstairs. "Okay," she replied, "but it wasn't very exciting." I put down the knife and looked at it in the sink. "Something strange happened to me today," I said as she came back down. "I came by your office to surprise you with lunch, right around the time Greg called in sick." She stopped at the foot of the stairs and didn't say anything. "Marcus," she says, but I interrupt her with a wave of my hand. "It's almost dinner," I say, grabbing the knife again. "Let's eat while it's still warm." The room is silent. After a few seconds, my wife goes to the cupboard and takes out some plates. We make dinner together, as if nothing happened. But something did happen, and I don't know what to think about it. The rain has stopped. But the storm isn't over. That night was awkward, to say the least. We both pretended like nothing had happened, but it was obvious that neither of us believed it. It's 2:17 a.m. I just checked the time on the alarm clock next to my bed. Anna is sleeping next to me, breathing steadily. I lie still for a few more seconds, listening to her. When I'm sure she's fast asleep, I sit up. The rain has stopped. The room is dark, except for the faint orange light shining through the blinds. It's a street light outside the window. I turn my head to look at Anna. Her phone is on the nightstand on her side of the bed. It is connected to the charger as usual. If I grab it and look through it, I will find the messages from Greg. I know this because I've already done that. When I confronted her with it, she denied it. She said it wasn't what it looked like. She said, "It's just a friend. I have to be sure. One more time. I have to be sure. I have to know if she's lying to me." I wait a short while longer. Then I move. I know exactly how to move so that she won't notice. I've thought this through many times. I know which floorboard on her side of the bed is creaking and how to avoid stepping on it. I know how to pick up her phone and bring it back with me to my side of the bed without waking her up. The password to unlock her phone is our anniversary, written backwards. I knew it would be. I'm her husband, after all. I know her better than anybody. Or at least, I thought I did. I enter the password and open the phone. The light from the screen is almost blinding in the darkness. I turn it away from Anna so that it won't disturb her sleep. I open the messages. It's all there. Greg. They are calling it work group, but it is obvious to me now that it's only them two in this conversation. "I miss you. Lunch was so good. I like that thing you do. Can we do it again tomorrow? Love the blue shirt, by the way." I scrolled up and saw that this wasn't the only guy. There were more messages from other men, pictures, nothing X-rated, but definitely a little too flirtatious. And one of those guys was Greg from her yoga class. I recognized him from the blue scarf, the one Anna had bought for me, or so I thought. But it didn't stop there. I kept scrolling and found a conversation with someone named Paul Neighbor. I felt my heart drop. Paul was the guy who lived next door. We'd had him over for a barbecue just last month. The messages between them were just as damning. "Marcus is doing overtime on Thursday, right?" "Yep, come by after 8. For the third conversation, I read the message. "Dan, office." It all had the same vague language, the same fake meetings and late nights. Each conversation aligned with the next, filling in a puzzle of lies that went back for months, maybe even longer. Anna stirred in bed, and I froze. The phone was still in my hand. I could hear her breathing softly, and I prayed she wouldn't wake up. She whispered something that sounded like my name, then turned over. I could smell her hair, that familiar scent of lavender, and the new perfume she had started wearing more recently. I continued reading the messages, making notes in my head. It didn't take long for me to notice the patterns. Thursday nights with Paul. Lunch with Greg on Tuesdays. Every other Saturday with Dan. Did they all know about each other, or was she keeping them in the dark, just like me? A new message appeared on the screen. It was from Greg. "See you Saturday. Told the wife I've got a double shift." Anna's response. "Perfect. I already told Marcus about the quarterly reports." The quarterly reports? Of course. I closed my eyes, reminded of our discussion about the garden center. A small lie among many others. A car passes by outside, momentarily illuminating the bedroom with its headlights. I take a good look at Anna as she sleeps next to me. I've known this woman for 12 years, but now everything feels surreal, as if I'm watching a movie. I close down the text conversations and put the phone back on the nightstand, exactly as I found it. Anna is still asleep. I lie down and look at the ceiling. It's 3:04 a.m. In 4 hours, Anna will wake up and prepare for work. She will use that new perfume and kiss me goodbye, and I will watch her leave the house, knowing what I know. "Marcus?" Anna's voice is groggy. "Are you awake?" "Yeah, just thinking," I say, my tone sounding normal. "About what?" She turns to face me, placing a hand on my arm. I looked at her, trying to remember her face. "You work at the garden center," I said. "Too bad about Saturday." She says, eyes already closing again. "We'll go another time." "Yeah, another time," I say, as she falls back asleep. A new flowchart begins to form in my mind, not of possibilities, but of certainties. Greg, Paul, Dan, Anna. The rain has stopped outside. I close my eyes and listen to Anna's soft breathing. I think about Saturday, about quarterlies that don't exist. I think about the precision required not to slip up, not even one time. There are a lot of decisions to be made in the coming days, but that's fine. I've always been good at that. The night passes by in a blur. I must have eventually fallen asleep, because when I open my eyes, it's morning. I get out of bed and go downstairs. The next day, I sat down at my desk at home, looking at my computer screen. It was still early in the morning, but I felt wide awake. I could hear Anna moving around upstairs, doing exactly what she said she would do, just like I knew she would. I opened a spreadsheet, creating columns for date, location, and person, and then I began typing. "I'm leaving in a bit, honey," Anna yelled from upstairs. "Have a good day," I say back, sounding a little distracted. "Don't work too hard." The door closed exactly 17 minutes later. I waited for her to drive away before I got out of bed. The USB stick went into her laptop, and 3 minutes later the spyware was installed. It would be impossible for her to detect it, and it would send me everything that she typed on her computer. It didn't matter if she deleted her search history or any messages she sent. I would receive a copy of everything. My phone buzzed, and I had a text from Anna. "Forgot my lunch in the fridge. Don't let it go to waste." I went into the kitchen and opened the fridge. The lunch bag was right there in the middle of the fridge, as if she'd put it there on purpose to make it look like she'd just forgotten it. I took a photo of it on my phone. "Hey, just a heads up," she says. "I'm gonna go grab some water." "Cool," I answer her. The next day, I wake up and start taking steps to secure my digital life. I managed to do a few things on my list, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. I forward my emails, I back up my photos and files, I change my password recovery settings, and so on. Then I get another notification. It's Paul in our neighborhood group chat. "Hey, anyone able to come over this afternoon and help me move some furniture around? My back's not great." A few other neighbors responded to the group chat, but not Anna. Of course not. She was at work. I wrote in my spreadsheet, "Paul, no contact on group chat during supposed work hours." At 11:43 a.m., the doorbell rang. I looked at my phone and saw Paul standing on our porch in his running clothes. I opened the door. "Hey, Marcus. Hope I'm not interrupting your Saturday," he says, rocking back and forth a little. "Do you happen to have those hedge trimmers I could use?" I noticed the faint smell of cologne on him, the same cologne I've smelled on Anna. "Yeah, sure," I say, smiling like an idiot. "They're in the garage, one sec. How's Sarah?" "Ah, you know pregnant women," he chuckles, scratching his head. "Everything makes her puke." I filed that information away. Pregnant, 7 months along, husband is seeing my wife every Thursday. "Here you go," I say, walking back up to Paul with the trimmers. "You want some help with your hedges?" "No, I'm good. Appreciate it, though," he says, practically running backwards. "Say hi to Anna for me." "Sure," I reply, as he rushes back to his house. I add another line to my spreadsheet. Paul, acting strangely, refused company. I have the rest of the day to myself, so I continue going through Anna's laptop, looking through old emails and pictures she has stored on it, while waiting for the tracking software to give me her location updates. At around 2 p.m., I start receiving the first location updates from the tracking software. She is nowhere near her office. In fact, she is in a completely different part of town, at a hotel. I open up the picture folder on my phone where we have our shared photos from our time together and start comparing the dates with the information I've got from the tracking software. The doorbell rings again at 3:15 p.m. "I made too much," she says, handing me a dish. "I know Anna's working today, so I figured you could use a home-cooked meal." I took the plate from her, noticing how she avoided looking at me. "That's really sweet of you," I say, looking at her. "How's Dan? I haven't seen him at the block parties recently." "Oh, he's just been working a lot," she says, her smile getting a bit more tense. "You know how it is." "Yeah, of course," I say, wondering if she knows. "Thanks again for the casserole." I write down that Michelle came by in my notes and put the casserole in the fridge. I also put Anna's lunch in the fridge, and then I checked my phone. Anna's car was moving again, but now it was heading east, away from the office, away from the hotel. At 5:42 p.m., I heard Anna unlocking the front door. I was sitting in my office pretending to work on a spreadsheet for our house. "Hey babe, I'm back," she says. Work was killer. I shut the computer. "In here." She stood in the doorway, her makeup a little smeared, her blue scarf hanging down around her neck. "Hey, you've been in here a while," she says. "What have you been working on?" "Stuff," I reply, pointing at my monitor. "More of my weird stuff." "Got it," she chuckles, leaving the doorway. "I'm gonna shower. Michelle said she brought a casserole over?" Yeah, it's in the fridge, I call after her. Next to your sandwich. She hesitates for a moment before heading up the stairs. I go back to my computer and open a new tab in my spreadsheet. I fill it with more data, more evidence, more ammunition for the war that Anna doesn't know is coming. I hear the shower being turned on in the bathroom upstairs. I think about the hotel, about Greg's message, about Paul and Dan's behavior at the barbecues. It all fits together perfectly. My phone dings. The tracking software has been running for a full day, and the report has been sent to my email address. I open it up. I spend the rest of the night reading it. By the time the sun rises, I'm not only convinced that Anna is cheating on me, I'm also planning my revenge. The email report from the tracking software is extensive and, as I feared, revealing. I've read through it all, copying relevant information to the spreadsheet. 10:47 a.m. Holiday Inn Riverside, room 412, 2:13 p.m. Text to Greg. Missing you already. 3:45 p.m. Message to Paul. Thursday as usual? I have been in my office since 4 a.m. It is morning now, and I am getting ready to take my first real step. I've been writing a draft of an email which I am going to send to Greg's boss. I've already rewritten it several times, and now I think it is perfect. To whom it may concern, I've recently been made aware of Greg Mitchell's inappropriate behavior with a number of your staff members. I stop and think about what to write next. The evidence is there in the screenshots, which show just enough without me being implicated. I wiped all the metadata from them and sent the email anonymously, using 3 different untraceable servers. I was just about to hit send when my phone buzzed with a text message from Anna. Have to be in early. I'll be late tonight. Love you. I look at the tracking data. She's at the office. Actually at the office. I respond, have a good day. Dinner's in the fridge for when you get home. I finish the email, inserting a few choice words to make it sound like I'm just trying to help her. I would prefer to keep my name anonymous given the context of the information I am about to share, but I felt it was my moral duty to notify you. My cursor hovers over the send button. All I need to do is click it, and the process will start. I take a sip of my coffee and double-check that I've deleted all traces of my involvement. Nothing to be found. Send. The email is gone. I lean back in my chair, feeling a sense of satisfaction. Now, I just have to wait. It doesn't take long for things to start happening. Within a day, I notice that Greg comes home from work early. It's only 2 p.m., and he's already pulling into the driveway. That's not like him at all. He's usually so punctual. I can tell something is bothering him, even though he tries to hide it. The phone vibrates in my pocket. It's Anna texting Greg. What the hell is happening? Why aren't you picking up? No response from Greg. I'll note that down in my spreadsheet, making a note of the time and the mood. A moment later, the group chat lit up. Greg's wife had canceled next week's book club meeting, citing a family emergency. Everyone expressed their sympathy. Anna's response was, "Sorry to hear that. Let me know if you need anything." I took a screenshot of the email for future reference. 3 days later, I was cutting the hedges in front of my house when Greg came outside. He looked disheveled. He walked back and forth in his driveway while talking on his phone. "I don't care what they're saying," he yells out onto the street. "You know it's a lie." I turned away from him, but stayed close enough to hear him. "You can't do this to me. You can't just suspend me pending an investigation." The hedge trimmer buzzes in my hands, masking the fact that I'm listening in. I cut another piece of the hedge, trimming it down a little more. Greg's wife stood in the entrance to their house. "Can you not do this in the driveway?" she asks. He waved her off, still yelling into his phone. Fine, but this isn't over." I made a mental note to add to my log later. Greg, day 3. Professional distress, relationship issues. That evening, Anna came home at 9:47 p.m. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop open in front of me, pretending to be working on some boring spreadsheet about garden maintenance. "You wouldn't believe the day I've had," she says, letting her bags fall to the floor with more emphasis than usual. "Oh?" I reply, not looking away from my screen. "Work's a shit show. Greg and marketing got suspended. Inappropriate conduct. HR won't tell us anymore," I said, looking up to her face. "It's bullshit," she says, pacing our living room. "Greg's a total pro. Someone must have it out for him." I reply, resuming my spreadsheet. There's usually a reason for these things. She paused in her pacing. What do you mean? Only that HR doesn't usually pursue things without proof, I say in a light tone, adding another line to my pretend garden notes. She received a text message on her phone and looked at it, her expression growing slightly more tense. I'm gonna go take a shower, she says, not even stopping to give me a kiss hello as she heads upstairs. I waited for Anna to turn on the shower before I opened my real spreadsheet again. Under Day 3 Outcomes, I wrote, Target 1, Professional Disruption Achieved. Subject A showing signs of stress, domestic tension escalating. As I heard the water still running upstairs, I started to plan my next move. Paul's Thursday night visits had been regular for a long time. It would be time for his wife to know how he was spending his evenings, but that would require a different angle of attack. The shower turned off. I switched back to the garden spreadsheet and added some numbers about mulch. Anna walked around upstairs and then went into our bedroom and closed the door. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Anna was sending another message to Paul. Let's chat. Same time tomorrow? I put the video in my evidence folder. Tomorrow, Paul would have his own shit to deal with. The bedroom door opened on the second floor. Anna, you joining me? In a minute, I answer, about to make another very deliberate decision. Tomorrow something else will happen, I think to myself, and shut my laptop. I go upstairs and get into bed with Anna, acting as if everything is normal. I have trouble sleeping the rest of the night, waking up early. I get up ahead of Anna and go outside to do some yard work, waiting for Paul to come outside. I know he'll be walking the dog soon, like he does every morning. I cut the rose bushes on the side of my yard that bordered Paul's property. I knew he would be leaving for his morning run any minute now. I wanted him to see me in the garden, doing some quiet work. Hey Marcus, getting in a run, huh? Paul says, leaning against the fence and doing some hamstring stretches. I looked up at him, feigning surprise. Oh, hey Paul. Nice morning for a run, huh? He nodded his head, but I heard the nervousness in his voice. Greg losing his job so suddenly had everyone a bit on edge. Missed you at the last neighborhood watch meeting, I say, running my thumb over a jagged stem. Yeah, I've been working a lot, he says, as flatly as he can. That's too bad. You missed a good one. Guest speaker was a private detective. He stopped stretching for a second. Oh? Yeah. He was telling me about how different his job is now, with technology. All the ways they can track you now. Your phone, your vehicle, cameras in your home. Another rose. Is that right? Paul asks, the relaxed demeanor in his voice slightly fading. Apparently, we leave a digital trail everywhere we go. Even deleted texts, he said. Apparently, a lot of spouses hire him to check on their husbands. He stopped stretching, pausing for a moment. Interesting. Yeah, but I think it would be scary to be investigated, never knowing if someone was watching you. I sit up and look him dead in the eye. Or recording you. He looked a little pale. I should go home. Sarah will start to worry. Sure thing. How's Sarah? I assume she's pretty far along by now. 7.5 months, he says, retreating. Give her my regards, I say. And Paul? He stops. Be careful. There are a lot of cameras in the area. I watch as he jogs away, looking like he's running from me rather than just going for exercise. I snip another rose from the bush and think about how his brain must be buzzing. Later that night, Anna's phone beeps with a text message. I notice it since I'm sitting across from her at the table, typing away on my laptop. What's up? I ask again, evenly. Nothing, she says. Paul, calling to cancel our monthly HOA planning session. I let out a small grunt as I type down a new sentence. He's been busy lately, since Sarah got pregnant and all of that. Anna types something back, but deletes it before sending it. The following days played out just as I'd expected. Paul took another route to work and stopped walking his dog on Thursday evenings. Every time Anna got a message, she looked a bit disappointed to see that it wasn't from him. Have you seen Paul lately? She asks me one night, trying to make it seem like a casual question as she stirs her coffee. Seen him? What do you mean? Yeah, just... He doesn't answer my messages about the neighborhood anymore. He's probably just busy with the baby, I reply. Fatherhood is overwhelming, no? Anna doesn't reply, but I notice a nervous look on her face. A week later, I see Paul jumping into his car as soon as Anna parks in our driveway. She looks disappointed. Did I do something wrong? She asks me that night. Or maybe she's asking herself. I looked up from my book. Wrong? Paul doesn't come to see me anymore. I thought he liked me. I heard the word friends in my head again. Maybe you're just growing apart from each other, I say, flipping to the next page, with everything that's happening. Her phone chimed and she looked at it. Her disappointment was obvious. I guess. I pretended to read for a while, but I watched her reflection in the window as she typed out several messages, deleting them all before sending them. She was finding it more difficult to keep her secrets, now that her lover had vanished without a trace. She seemed to be realizing just how much of her life had been built on lies. That night, I made another entry in my personal spreadsheet. Target 2. Complete. Subject A is increasingly upset and withdrawn. Household effects noted as well. I added a few more thoughts, knowing it would be Dan's turn next. But I wanted to let Anna suffer for a little while longer, wondering what had happened to Paul. One more pillar needed to be knocked down before I could collapse the entire structure. I watched Paul's wife from my office as she went out to check the mail. She was waddling now, her belly swollen. Anna was outside, pacing up and down the driveway. She looked like she wanted to talk to Paul's wife, but thought better of it. After a moment, she went back inside, and I allowed myself a small smile. It was all playing out exactly as I'd planned. 3 weeks later, I made a call and set up an appointment. It was time to turn all of my notes from an insurance policy into a weapon. The sound of the leather chair in Mr. Davidson's office creaks in time with the ticking of his grandfather clock. It's 10:15 in the morning, and I'm talking about the dissolution of my 12-year marriage as if it were a business deal. Quite the presentation you've put together here, Davidson says, scanning through my screenshots. His hair almost glows under the sunlight streaming in through his office windows. Thank you, I say. I thought it was important to be thorough. You certainly were. He taps on the portion about Paul. And these are all legitimate? Yep. I have copies of all the messages on several devices, and the tracking data as well. He takes out a notepad and starts scribbling in it with a pen. So what is it that you hope to accomplish, Mr. Marcus? I thought about it for a second. Looking up at his wall full of law degrees, I said, I want justice. What do you see that being? The house is mine. I bought it before we were married. The stock portfolio I built should be my responsibility. Other than that, I hesitate, thinking, I want her to learn a lesson. He stopped writing. Revenge? Justice, I tell him. Dished out with due process. He leaned back, looking at me as if he had seen 1,000 divorces before. You're very calm for a man in your situation. Feelings are a distraction. I enjoy being clear. Of course. He scribbles something on his notepad. Now, what's happening at home? How is she acting? As if everything around her is falling apart. Greg's career is in shambles, and she's worried about him. Paul's been distant too, which is unnerving her. And she doesn't know you're responsible for any of it? I smiled. She sees what she wants to see. A boring husband doing his spreadsheets and working in the garden. He nodded and wrote something down. If you waited a year and then filed for divorce, and she might start getting rid of stuff. I complete his thought. Exactly. Although, based on what you've shown me, I think we've got all we need to move forward now. I leaned forward a little, curious about what she would suggest. Give me a week to put together the preliminary paperwork. Keep doing your research. But Mr. Marcus? He looks stern. Don't screw this up for us. Don't approach her. Don't tip her off. Certainly not. That would be inefficient. Davidson gets up and reaches out his hand. I'll have my assistant send over the retainer agreement. Keep a record of everything until then. And Mr. Marcus? Yeah? Get some rest. You look like you haven't been sleeping much. I shook his hand. When this is all over, maybe I'll be able to sleep again. They will be. The law is on the side of the prepared. On my way out of the building, I noticed that I had missed 2 calls from Anna. She had sent me a text message as well. Hey, thinking about making that pasta you love tonight? Want to eat early? I replied, Sounds good. I'll be home by 6. Davidson's secretary handed me the retainer agreement as I got on the elevator, and I signed it without even reading it, just like I'd been practicing with the divorce papers. We'll get back to you, she says, taking the paper away with her. In the car, I opened up the spreadsheet I had on my laptop, detailing the timeline for the entire lawsuit. I added a few more important dates to it, then added a few more dollar signs and question marks for good measure. I wanted to make sure I did this at the most opportune time possible. My phone buzzed with another text message. It was from Anna. "We are out of basil and garlic. Can you pick some up?" I started the car and began to drive home, thinking about the best route to take so I could stop off and buy the rosemary. I would eat dinner with her tonight, I realized. And I would compliment her on the meal, even though I knew she wouldn't be around much longer to eat dinner with. It was almost funny when I thought about it. Almost. But not quite. I put the car in reverse and backed out of my parking spot. Then I began to drive to the grocery store. I would be on camera there, I realized. Just more evidence that I was a loving husband who wanted to make his wife happy. The law favors the prepared mind, Davidson had said, and I was prepared. The sun was beginning to set as I drove home. It took longer than usual for some reason, and I found myself getting frustrated at every red light. My patience was nearly gone, and I felt short-tempered, as if I had only so much time left and I didn't want to waste a single second of it. The drive back home from Davidson's office takes exactly 22 minutes. Once there, I go inside, and as always, I leave my phone on the kitchen table and head out again, this time to the grocery store. I pick up some fresh basil and garlic and start planning dinner for tonight. The surveillance cameras at the store will help me later. It'll make things look more believable. A message from Anna. "Got out early. Already home. Can't wait to cook for you." Her messages have gotten increasingly desperate over the last few weeks. It must be exhausting for her, pretending like everything is fine. I find her in the kitchen when I get back. She's playing music as she chops vegetables. "Great, you're here," she says, turning and planting a kiss on my lips that seems a little forced. I was just about to add the sauce. "Smells amazing in here," I reply, placing the grocery bag on the counter. On the security camera in the store, you would see that I hurried through my shopping trip, wanting to get back to my wife. "I was thinking we could sit in the dining room tonight," she says, as she chops away at the vegetables. "Make it a special evening." "What's the occasion?" She hesitates for a moment. Does there have to be? I just thought it would be nice. I begin to unpack the groceries. I see her reflection in the window in front of me. "How was work?" I ask, as nonchalantly as possible. "Fine. Busy." She pours the veggies into a pan with a bit of a slam. A little less crowded with everything. Greg's absence was palpable. "Any word on what happened yet?" "No, HR's being very cagey," she says, stirring the pan with quick, frustrated strokes. "It's so stupid. Greg would never—" She trailed off, and I noticed her grip on the wooden spoon tighten. "You never know," I offer mildly, pulling plates out of the cupboard. The music changes to something slower and more emotional, and Anna changes it to a more uplifting song. "I saw Sarah today," she blurts. "Paul's wife." "Yeah?" I line up the utensils just so. "She didn't say a word to me, just walked right by like I wasn't there." She sounds genuinely wounded. "I don't know what it is. Everyone's been acting really weird." I stop setting the table. Maybe they're just busy taking care of their baby. It's not just that. The wooden spoon scrapes against the pan. "Paul used to be such a good freight neighbor. Now he practically runs when he sees me coming." "People change," I say, fixing the fork. "Sometimes suddenly." She stopped moving. I could feel her eyes on my back, trying to decipher my words. "I guess they do," she says at last, still sounding a bit tentative. I set the table, and Anna starts serving dinner. I can tell she's nervous and she's being extra careful not to spill anything. "Wine?" she asks me, going for the ones we break out when we have company over. "Sure," I say, sitting down. She's even got the candles and the nice glasses and napkins out, like when we first started dating. She spilled a few drops on the tablecloth as she poured. "Oops, Butterfingers," she says, but it doesn't sound genuine. "No worries," I say, wiping it up with my napkin. Gives it some flavor. Dinner feels awkward. She tries to act normal, but can't, and I, for my part, try my best to be a good husband. "Hey," she says, twirling a bit of pasta on her plate. "What if we went on a vacation soon? Just you and me, like old times." I took a sip of wine. "I'd like that. I just have a lot on my plate at work right now." Sure. She chews her food. "Maybe in a couple weeks?" "Yeah, maybe," I respond. knowing full well there won't be a trip, not for both of us. Her phone buzzes on the table. I see a message come in from an unknown number, but Dan's name is in the text. Spam, I'm sure, she says, picking up her wine glass. I nodded, noting this down as a mental clue. Dan, the last person standing, for now. This is nice, I say, motioning to the fancy dinner arrangement. We should do it again. Yes, she perks up right away, eager to keep things normal. Maybe once a week? I'd love that. I lie, swallowing another mouthful of wine to ease the sting. After dinner, Anna went to the kitchen to do the dishes. I heard her scrubbing harder and harder, the clanging of pots and pans growing louder. My phone buzzed and I saw it was an email from Davidson. Documentation is going well. Continue as planned. Just then, Anna came into my office, still wearing the Christmas apron. Hey, do you want to watch a movie? She asks, faking her enthusiasm. For old time's sake? I looked at my computer screen as if I was considering it. Please? She asks, and there's something in her eyes that tells me she really doesn't want to be alone right now. Sure, I say, getting up. You choose. She picks out a romantic comedy that we watched together on our third date, trying to remind us both of better times. Or maybe just trying to remind herself of better times. We sit together in the living room, and she snuggles up next to me on the couch. I know she's just pretending, but I play along. I put an arm around her, and after a while, she even pretends to relax. If you looked in the window, you might even think we were a happy couple, but I can feel her muscles tense up at the sound of her phone buzzing. She doesn't check it this time, but I can tell she wants to. We watch the movie for a while, and I listen to Anna's breathing. I wonder if she knows how close she is to the cliff she's dangling from. A car door slammed outside. It sounded like it was in the driveway. I scared myself, she adds, squeezing in by my side. I stroked her hair, knowing that I should document how I was still being a loving husband, at least for now. The movie ended happily, and the music swelled, and Anna wiped her eyes, saying she had allergies. I knew she was crying because she felt guilty about trying to kill me. Maybe she was even starting to feel bad about the affair. We went upstairs to bed, and she kissed me passionately. I kissed her back, but again I thought to myself how she would pay for this. And then I thought that I should add that to my log for the day. Increased signs of affection, likely due to guilt. She fell asleep before me, and I lay there in bed, thinking about how I would confront her with all of her lies, and how she would crumble to pieces when I did. I would savor that moment, I thought to myself. It would be the best feeling in the world. It was several hours later, the middle of the night, and I was still awake. Lying next to my wife, I listened to her breathing, still pretending to be asleep. I was still anticipating the morning, waiting for it to come. It would be the last morning of our marriage, I was sure of that, and I had the evidence to prove it. I can't sleep. It's already dawn outside, and I'm lying in bed staring up at the ceiling, counting the minutes until it's time to confront Anna. She lies next to me, sleeping peacefully, not knowing that this Saturday morning will be the last time she wakes up with me by her side. The manila envelope is in my briefcase, ready to be opened. I've already read through its contents several times, but I'm going to make sure Anna reads everything. I look at the clock on my nightstand. It's 6:17 a.m. I get out of bed and start preparing for the day. I go to the kitchen and make coffee. I set everything up so that it's ready for Anna to see as soon as she comes down the stairs. I put the envelope on the kitchen table and place it exactly in the middle, perfectly straight and parallel with the edges. I want to make sure she can't avoid it. I hear her get out of bed at 7:43 a.m. She goes into the bathroom and starts the shower. I sit down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and pretend to read the newspaper while I listen to her footsteps above me. Something smells good, she says from the top of the stairs. I can hear the fake positivity in her voice. It just isn't her. Coffee, I answer. And toast if you want it. She stands in the doorway, smiling at me. Her hair is wet, and she's wearing the blue robe I bought her last Christmas. Her eyes go to the envelope, and she pretends not to notice it. What's that? She asks, pouring coffee with casual indifference. Something you should read. She stopped herself, about to take a sip, and said, Work stuff? Sort of. Anna didn't answer me. Instead, she just looked at me, then at the envelope in my hand. After a few seconds, she put down her coffee cup and took it from me. Looks like it weighs a lot, she says, holding it up. It does. She flips open the first page. I see her realization, and as she turns to the second page, and the third. What? She gulps. What is this? Proof, I reply, closing the newspaper I never actually read. Pretty compelling stuff, huh? I can hear her breathing heavily as she goes through the screenshots. Marcus, Can you explain why Greg got written up at work? I ask calmly. Or why Paul no longer wants to go on walks with me on Thursday nights? Or why Dan is acting so skittish all the time? Lastly, she gets to the divorce papers. How? She says, the papers falling from her hands and spreading out on the table. I know everything, Anna, I say in a calm, measured tone. Every rendezvous, every text, every intricate web of deception. She slumped down into a chair, looking like her legs could no longer hold her. You did this? To Greg? And Paul? Actions have consequences. I get to my feet, smoothing out my jacket. I just made sure they were delivered correctly. Marcus, come on. Her voice is trembling. Let's discuss this. We're done discussing. I glance at my watch. 8:17 a.m. Perfect timing. My lawyer will be in touch with yours, if you have one. If not, I'd get on that post-haste. She began to cry as she read the words and said, 12 years, 12 years, and you just... 12 years of what, Anna? Of faithfulness? Of honesty? Of trust? He sounds like he's trimming a hedge. They meant something to me. To you, they meant something else. She let out a sob and I took a few steps back toward the door. Where are you going? She asks, the beginnings of panic in her voice. Out. I recommend that you use the time to pack. This house was my property before we were married. You have until Monday. Monday? Where am I supposed to go? I'm sure Greg will have a place for you to stay, I say with the same cold demeanor. Although with his new job, he might not be able to afford rent. She falls forward, resting her head on the stack of broken things. I want to console her. 12 years together will do that, but I don't. Marcus? She asks, her voice frail, confused. Did it mean anything to you? I thought about it. It meant everything. That's why I needed it to be right. I closed the door behind me. A moment later, I saw Anna out the window, falling to the floor in tears. A text message came in on my phone. It was from Davidson. Ready for Monday? Yes, I reply, getting into my car. Package dropped off, continuing as planned. I looked at my wife through the window one last time before I drove off. I saw her picking up the papers from the floor, probably trying to figure out if there was any way out of this. But there wasn't. It was too late now. A door slammed shut somewhere behind me, and I drove away, leaving my wife and my life in the rearview mirror. We would have to go through this whole thing again on Monday, but I wasn't worried about that. It was already over. I had won. I stayed in a hotel for 3 weeks before I was able to find a new place to live. It was nice being away from my wife and my old home, but still not being able to settle down anywhere for good. It was like floating around in some kind of limbo. And then one day, I got a call from my real estate agent. I signed the lease papers the following day and moved in on Monday morning. It was a day like any other, just like the day I had left Anna. I unlocked the door to my new apartment. It's been 3 weeks since I confronted Anna with the affair. 3 weeks of rebuilding my life from scratch, creating a new normal for myself. The apartment is spotless, with everything in its place. No pictures on the walls, no personal touches. I sit down at my desk and open my laptop. Another email from Davidson. Last meeting's in about a month. They're trying to stall it in some way. They're gonna lose. I pour myself a glass of whiskey and sit down to read through the attachments Davidson sent me. Anna calls again. This is the 7th time this week. It's all recorded in my spreadsheet. There's a knock on the door. I open it and find Sarah on the other side. Mr. Marcus? She asks, a hint of nervousness in her voice as I open the door. I didn't mean to bother you. I wanted to thank you. I got out of her way and let her inside. Don't worry about it, I responded. The messages you sent me... She makes her way to the chair I pull out for her. I would have never known. Sometimes the truth just comes out. She doesn't wear a wedding ring anymore. I guess Paul is moving on with his life. He says he wants joint custody, Sarah says, and I know she's talking about Paul. Write everything down, I say, reaching for a folder. This should help. She takes the file with the printouts of Paul's messages to Anna. Another broken marriage. How did you keep it together? She asks, looking at the incriminating text. When you found out? Emotions make you sloppy. I threw his clothes out on the lawn. She chuckles. Not smart. We all have our ways. My phone buzzed again, this time with Anna's face on the screen. I silenced it without saying anything. It's hitting her hard, Sarah notes as I slowly approach. I ran into her at the store yesterday. She seems different, but she made her choice. Greg got fired, she adds, squirming in her seat. Paul mentioned he's been drinking, threatening to sue. I just nodded, keeping that in mind. And Dan? Sarah asks. His wife knows as well? Word gets around. A moment later, there was another knock, and this time I looked through the peephole to see Anna. She looked smaller than I remembered her, as if she'd lost some weight. I should go, Sarah says, standing up awkwardly. Thanks again for your help. I opened the door just in time for Sarah to enter. Anna looked startled and moved out of the way as the pregnant woman came past her. Marcus, Anna says, and her voice is shaky, can we please talk? Talk to the lawyers. She took a step forward anyway, extending one hand toward me. You're hurting so many people. No, Anna. Choices ruined lives. I'm just making sure credit is given where credit is due. Greg's going to kill himself, she says, tearing up. Paul's wife is pregnant. Dan has kids. You should have thought of that before. She began to sob even harder. When did you become so heartless? When did you start breaking promises? That was like a slap to the face. The 12 years we spent together meant nothing to you? Everything. That's why it had to be perfect. Perfect? You think this is perfect? This wholesale slaughter? It needs to be perfect. Anna looked like she was going to faint. She held onto the doorframe to support herself. I never meant... Intent doesn't matter. Only outcome. What do you need from me? She asks, her voice trembling. I don't need anything. Not anymore. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. It was Davidson. I checked it, seeing the look on Anna's face. Your lawyer has the paperwork, I say, starting to shut the door. I think that's where you need to focus your energy. Marcus, wait. The door closed, and I heard her sit down on the other side. She was crying, begging me to let her in. I returned to my desk and wrote a few new notes in my journal. Subject exhibiting increased emotional distress. Attempted to contact me in spite of restraining order. Health declining. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and reviewed the latest financial statements. The judge had ruled in my favor, and Anna and her lawyer had to take back their claim that they owned half of my house. Finally, Anna stopped crying. I listened to her footsteps as she walked away from the door. I looked at the surveillance camera feed on my phone and saw her walk to the rental car. I had been able to prove that the other car had been purchased with my personal funds prior to the marriage. I received another email from Davidson. Opposition requesting meditation. Recommend declining. Agreed, I reply. Let's do it. Thunder rumbles in the distance, and I turn to see another storm coming in. It will be here soon. The empty glass of whiskey sits on the desk where I left it. Tomorrow, I'll have to continue the work I've started, but for now, I just sit and enjoy the view of my perfectly executed destruction. Perfection takes time, after all, and I have all the time in the world. 6 months passed. The snow melted and the rain came, and eventually the summer heat arrived. I spent those days destroying what Anna and I had built together, and I did it with precision and care. I moved into a corporate apartment, and then later bought a house on the other side of town. I never opened the bottle of whiskey and kept it packed in a box. It was a memento of that stormy night when Anna left me. And when Davidson was finished, I was standing in my new kitchen. This was the last box containing papers from Davidson's office. And with that, the last piece of documentation needed to sever all ties between myself and Anna. It had been 6 months since that day in my temporary apartment. The sun was shining in through the windows, illuminating the dust motes in the air. I had cleaned up the place a lot since moving back in. New furniture, new decor, a fresh coat of paint. Everything was different now. I wanted it that way. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I pulled it out to see a message from Davidson. All paperwork filed, case closed. Congratulations. It felt strange to be congratulated, but I appreciated the sentiment. I put the phone back in my pocket and turned back to the kitchen. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I went to answer it and saw Sarah standing on the porch with her baby in her arms. "I hope you don't mind," she says, rocking the baby in her arms. "Oh, not at all, please, come on in." She sits down in one of my new leather chairs, the baby still cooing against her shoulder. "I got the paperwork today," she says. "Paul gave up his rights. Custody's all mine." Good for him. He's in Arizona, apparently. Shacked up with some woman he met in rehab. She holds the baby close. "And I heard from Anna last week." I paused, my hand still on the water glass. "She's not doing okay, Marcus. Greg tried to kill himself, and it really fucked her up." "He lived," I reply, my voice emotionless. I remember the hospital details in one of my files. "Barely. Dan's kids don't talk to him. His wife took everything." There is no sense of victory in Sarah's voice. It's all just so sad. People deserve what's coming to them. Maybe, but she looks down at her daughter's sleeping face. I don't know if the punishments fit the crimes. I put her water down on a coaster in front of her. Justice isn't about equivalence. It's about making things right. So this was all about justice? In part. She moves the baby to her other shoulder and looks at me. "I never saw you angry. You know that? Not once. Not even now. Anger means I'm out of control." "Yeah, I guess that's the scariest thing," she says, turning to leave. "Good luck, Marcus. I hope you find what you're looking for." She closed the door behind her, leaving me alone with my neatly organized home. I walked over to the box on the counter and removed the last papers to put them in their proper place. There was a picture of me and Anna from our wedding hidden between the documents. I studied it for a while, trying to remember what we were laughing about. I got a new notification on my phone. I opened it and read, "Marketing executive found dead in hotel room, suspected overdose." I saved the article in my folder of evidence and then deleted the app. I didn't need to keep it anymore. I had everything I needed. The sun was setting and the shadows were growing. I put the picture of me and Anna in the paper shredder and watched it disappear, piece by piece. It was a fitting end to it all. I looked at the new piece of art hanging on the wall. It was a painting of lines and circles in different colors. It matched the rest of the room perfectly. I stood in front of it for a while and admired the symmetry. The house was quiet and peaceful. I turned off the lights one by one and made my way to the bedroom. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes. I felt content and satisfied. Everything was exactly as I wanted it to be. I had finally found peace.
"All right, everyone's presentations are done," Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right." His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their IN. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.